Today we'll be talking about the program Connection Builder in Steel Modeling, the simple way to create connection macros. What is the Connection Builder? First, let's define connections and macros. Well, what is a connection? A connection, as we mentioned here, means a group of objects used to link two or more structure members together, or transfer the load from one member to another in structural steel modeling. Connection is assembly of multiple elements which links two structure members together. These elements include beams, contour plates, bolts, welds, plane cuts, plane fits, and part cuts. Standard connection macros are programs that create connection elements per design requirement. There's usually one macro for one type of connection. Connection Builder is a program used to create connection macros for typical and special connections. It comes with setting files so no programming is required. It consists of independent modules developed in .NET in AutoCAD, and it applies to TeklaStructure through Tekla Open API. It also contains the ability to transfer created macros to other 3D modeling software, as long as it also has .NET API. Connection macros made by Connection Builder has a standard user interface, in which most input items, like a text box, accept inputs such as formula, table variables, and conditional statements. By using them, the user can create intelligent connections, which is driven by member size, UDA, and geometry. Macros can read required data from tables, text files, and Excel documents. In a word, Connection Builder makes creating macros quick and simple, makes the application of macros fast and easy, makes connections more consistent, and reduces the cost of development, application, and checking. So, why is it more advantageous to use Connection Builder over your typical approach to developing connection macros? There are a lot of connections in TeklaStructure, such as Tekla connections and Doco connections. They add up to over 400 connections by my count. But are these connections all used? No. Only a few are used often. And these connections, which are frequently used, such as hip valley shear plate connections, undergo revisions often. These revisions usually aren't due to bugs or errors, but rather because there are some controls and rules that needs to be added or revised. Of course, we could try to cover all the potential controls and rules that we need to add or revise and put them into the macro so we won't have to ever revise it again. But this is impractical because no one can think of all the possibilities at the current moment, and some special case will always arise. So let's talk about the cost of connection macro development. The cost of development varies depending on a couple of factors. It will be lower if the desired macro can be created from modifying an existing one, and such a process could take from hours to days. However, the cost will be much higher if a macro has to be made from the ground up, and this could take anywhere from days to weeks. We also must consider the programming cost and the impact on the project schedule due to the delay of making the connection macro. In Doco, when a detailer wants to have a new macro or get an existing macro modified, he needs to contact the job manager first. Then the job manager needs to discuss it with the development manager if he agrees with the detailer. Then the development manager will talk to the programmer to see if he agrees, and the programmer will do the work if he agrees. When the macro is made, it won't be perfect at first, so the detailer will need to test it, and there will be a lot of testing and revamping, as well as back and forth communication between the user and the programmer. Once the macro proves to be satisfactory, it can finally be put to use by the detailer in the actual job he needed it for. This process can be difficult if it happens in different offices where everyone needs to communicate through phone or email. As you can see, creating a macro is a hassle, and the detailer won't choose to do it unless it's necessary, such as in cases when the job is too difficult to accomplish without the macro, or if there is such a large amount of connections that needs to be made, the job would take way too long without. On the other hand, using the Connection Builder software, you can create a new macro or modify an existing macro between 20 minutes to a few hours, depending on how many elements are required in the macro. It is 10 to 20 times faster than the regular method, and macros can be freely copied across different jobs and different software versions. Connection Builder makes modeling more consistent compared to manual work, as it reduces the chance of error. Connection macro made by Connection Builder can set formulas in most fields of the user control dialog. Thus, a macro can select connection types by geometry and member profile, and can also be driven by any UDA. By using a formula, users can create macros that are fully automatic, as in no input for end user, and all data is from design table, Excel documents, or design conditions. In addition, making fully automatic connections could reduce the amount of work in checking the connections. Since all the inputs are from formulas, users can check the formulas instead of each individual connection, which saves a lot of time. Let's look at the program structure of Connection Builder. There are three modules in Connection Builder. The first module is used to set connection items, as it has a structure like a motherboard and allows the user to insert or remove connection elements for each macro setting. The second module is used to set up user interface for a macro. Each connection element has its own standard user controls, which allow users to control how elements behave. The module can be used to organize all user controls by their locations and allow users to insert pictures and notes on the user interface. The first two modules are for senior detailers or the job preparation team, while the third one is for end users to apply connections to Tekla model. Here's a diagram of how the three modules interact with one another. In the first module, we can build connection sketch files. It allows us to define global variables, adjust connection elements, and save the connection sketch files under the working model folder. The second module allows us to set dialog form. We can load the setting files from the working module folder, define the user interface of the connection macro, adjust variables as required, and save the setting files in the working model folder. The third module allows the end user to apply connections in TeklaStructure. Using sketch files from the working model folder, we could set values for control items, use formulas to make intelligent connections, and apply the current settings to the desired connection parts or points in Tekla model. Whenever possible, macros should be built intelligently, using formulas, tables, and conditional statements. This reduces the end user input and speeds up the application of connections. It also reduces checking work needed, since it will eliminate random errors and increase quality of work. Ideally, the program can be used to input all special connection code into members, then use auto connection to apply a standard and coded connection into the model. Thus, detailer only need to focus on special conditions and adjust them, like electability, weld bolt access, and the such, which regular connection macro can cover. This exposes less control to the end user while providing necessary controls for special condition need and creates a good balance. Experience will also help improve on it. Now that we've talked about what a connection builder is and its advantage over the regular method of creating connection macros, let's look at its application in real projects. In the past 1.5 years, Connection Builder has been used in 7 jobs, over 100 types of macros. Connections are special connections that are not covered by Tekla or Docker macros. They range from simple connections such as a prep, vent hole, or special shear plate, to complex ones such as BRB braces and horizontal braces, which contains 20 to 30 more elements. The project's connection builder has used includes the Carson Graham Secondary Placement School, the Harman Retail Center, the Replacement Naval Hospital, the Intel FAB42 P013 Rivers, the Intel FAB42 P05A building, and the truck loading and bagging plant. All these connections could not be done by Tekla or Docker macro. The existing macros either won't work or were insufficient and inefficient. Most connection macros were made very quickly, between 10 minutes to 10 hours. BRB braces, however, took longer. They took 8 hours per connection because they include diagrams, transferable Excel files, and input data all set up in Excel. This makes it fully automatic with zero input by the end user, and applying connections takes only seconds. Regular macro can be made within 2 to 3 hours using the connection builder.